Here's a question that haunted me for years, and once you hear it, it'll haunt you too. Not where you go when you die. That's too vague. Not heaven or hell. That's theology. I'm asking something far more specific, far more disturbing. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead, do it. Now, pay attention to the fact that you're paying attention. There's something there, isn't there? Something experiencing this MO. Meant, something aware. You might call it consciousness. You might call it the self. But most people, if you ask them what it really is, will use one word, the soul. Now here's the terrifying part. 73% of people across all cultures believe in some form of soul, something non-physical that makes you you, something that persists, something that might even survive death. But here's what keeps me up at night. We know exactly what happens to your body when you die. Every atom is accounted for. The carbon goes here, the nitrogen goes there, the calcium ends up somewhere else. Not a single particle vanishes. The universe doesn't lose anything. But the soul, we can't find it, we can't weigh it, we can't measure it leaving. And yet, something undeniably changes. The lights go out, the person is gone. So where did it go? Or, and this is the truly disturbing question, was it ever there at all? By the end of this talk, you're going to understand something profound about what you are. You'll see why the question of the soul isn't just philosophical, it's physical. And you might walk away realizing that the answer is far stranger, far more beautiful, and far more terrifying than any religion or science has dared to tell you. Let me show you what I mean. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about the soul? Ask 100 people, and you'll get 100 answers. But there are some common threads. The soul is supposed to be the essential you. It's the part that feels, that thinks, that experiences. It's immaterial, not made of matter. It's the ghost in the machine. And crucially, most people believe it's independent of the body. Your body is just a temporary vehicle. The soul is the driver. This idea is ancient. The Egyptians believed the soul had 5 parts. The Greeks thought it was housed in the heart, or maybe the brain, depending on which philosopher you asked. Christians, Muslims, Hindus, different traditions, same basic concept. There's a you beyond the physical you, and when the body dies, that essence persists. It goes somewhere. But here's the thing. Science has been looking for this thing for centuries, and we keep coming up empty. In 1907, a physician named Duncan McDougall tried to weigh the soul. I'm not kidding. He put dying patients on a specially designed bed mounted on a huge scale, accurate to within a few grams, and he waited. At the moment of death, he claimed, the body lost weight. About 21 grams, he said. That, he concluded, was the weight of the soul leaving the body. Beautiful idea, right? Except it's complete nonsense. Other researchers couldn't replicate his results. The weight fluctuations he measured were probably just moisture evaporating from the lungs, or air leaving the body, or measurement errors. The experiment was fundamentally flawed. But here's what's interesting. People wanted to believe it, because if the soul has weight, it's physical. If it's physical, it's real. If it's real, maybe it persists, but the soul doesn't weigh 21 grams. It doesn't weigh anything. So maybe it's not physical at all. Maybe it's something else entirely. Now you might think, okay, so the soul isn't physical. So what? Lots of things aren't physical. Love isn't physical. Thoughts aren't physical. But wait, that's not quite right, is it? Love is a pattern of neural activity. Thoughts are electrochemical signals cascading through neurons. They're absolutely physical. They're made of atoms doing chemistry. We can see them on brain scans. We can measure them with electrodes. So what about the soul? If it's not physical, how does it interact with the physical brain? This is called the interaction problem, and it's been stumping philosophers for 400 years. Think about it. If your soul is immaterial and your brain is material, how do they talk to each other? When you decide to raise your arm, that decision supposedly originates in your immaterial soul. But then what? How does that immaterial decision cause material neurons to fire? How does it push atoms around? It's like trying to move a rock with a thought. Not thinking about moving the rock, actually moving it without touching it, without any physical connection. The philosopher René Descartes tried to solve this. He said the soul interacts with the body through the pineal gland, a small structure in the center of the brain. Why the pineal gland? Because it's singular. There's only one. And Descartes thought the soul must be singular too. So that's where they meet. Except we now know what the pineal gland does. It produces melatonin. It regulates sleep. There's no evidence it's a portal for immaterial souls. Descartes was grasping at straws. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's suppose just for a moment that there is something non-physical, something beyond atoms and energy, something that makes you you. Here's the question. Where is it right now? Point to it. Go ahead. Where's your soul? You probably want to point to your chest or maybe your head. But when we open up your chest, we find a heart, a pump made of muscle tissue. When we open up your head, we find a brain, about 1.4 kilograms of tissue made of 86 billion neurons. Every thought you've ever had, every memory, every emotion, every decision, all of it correlates with activity in this biological machine. Damage the brain and the soul changes. Alcohol affects it. Drugs affect it. Disease affects it. A stroke in the right hemisphere and you lose awareness of the left side of your body. Damage to the hippocampus and you can't form new memories. Remove the frontal lobes, as was done in lobotomies, and your personality fundamentally changes. If the soul is independent of the brain, why does brain damage change the soul? This is the neuroscience problem. Everything we observe about consciousness, everything about your inner life, depends on the brain. The you changes when the brain changes. So where's the extra ingredient? Where's the soul that's supposed to be independent? And here's the kicker. We can now watch thoughts happen. With functional MRI, we can see which parts of your brain light up when you think about a face versus a place. We can predict what you're seeing based purely on brain activity. We can even decode simple thoughts. The technology is crude, but it's improving. And every discovery points in the same direction. The mind is what the brain does. So let me ask you again. If the soul isn't in the body, isn't in the brain, isn't physical, doesn't weigh anything, and can't be measured, where is it? And when you die, where does it go? Layer 1. What you're actually made of. Let me explain this the way I'd explain it to a bright 12-year-old. Let's start with what you actually are physically. Your body contains about 7 octillion atoms. That's a 7 followed by 27 zeros. About 65% of your mass is oxygen, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, and 3% nitrogen. These 4 elements make up 96% of you. The rest, calcium in your bones, iron in your blood, trace elements, makes up the remaining 4%. Now here's what's remarkable. Those atoms aren't special. A carbon atom in your hand is identical to a carbon atom in a tree, or in a distant star, or in the air you're breathing. Atoms don't have labels. They don't know whose body they're in. And here's the really strange part. The atoms in your body right now weren't there 7 years ago. About 98% of the atoms in your body get replaced every year. Your skin cells last about 2 weeks. Your red blood cells last about 4 months. Even your bones, your skeleton, gets completely rebuilt every 10 years. So if the atoms that make up your body are constantly being replaced, what persists? What makes you the same person you were 10 years ago? It's not the atoms. It's the pattern. It's the arrangement. It's the information. Think of it like a whirlpool in a river. The water molecules flowing through the whirlpool are constantly changing. New water comes in, old water flows out, but the whirlpool itself persists. The shape, the pattern stays the same, even though the substance is always different. You are like that whirlpool. You're a pattern that persists while the material flows through you. But here's where it gets tricky. If you're a pattern, where does the pattern live? In the atoms? But we just said the atoms change. In the relationships between atoms? Maybe. But what are relationships? Are they physical? Can you touch a relationship? This is where we need to talk about emergence. Layer 2. The emergence problem. Emergence is when simple things interacting create something complex that seems entirely new. Water molecules are not wet individually. Wetness emerges when you have many molecules together. A single neuron isn't conscious, but 86 billion of them, connected in intricate networks, somehow create consciousness. Or do they? This is the hard problem of consciousness, named by philosopher David Chalmers in the 1990s. We can explain how the brain processes information. We can explain how it responds to stimuli, integrates sensory data, controls behavior. These are the easy problems. Easy in the sense that we can imagine solving them with enough research, even if they're technically difficult. But the hard problem is different. The hard problem is, why is any of this accompanied by experience? Why is there something it's like to be you? Why do you have an inner life at all? Think about pain. When you stub your toe, nerve signals travel to your brain. We can trace the pathway. Pain receptors in your toe fire. Signals travel up your leg through your spinal cord, reach your brain, get processed in the somatosensory cortex and other regions. We understand this process, but the process doesn't explain the hurt, the actual sensation of pain, that subjective, horrible feeling. Where does that come from? Some scientists say consciousness is an illusion, but that doesn't work either. An illusion for whom? If consciousness is an illusion, there must be something being fooled, and that something is conscious. We're going in circles, and that should tell you something. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Now let me tell you about some experiments that will blow your mind. Split brain patients. In severe cases of epilepsy, doctors sometimes cut the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers connecting the brain's two hemispheres, to prevent seizures from spreading. After this surgery, the two halves of the brain can't communicate directly. And here's what happens. The patients seem to have two separate consciousnesses. Show a picture to the left visual field, which goes to the right hemisphere, and the patient can't say what they saw because language is in the left hemisphere. But ask them to draw it with their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, and they draw it perfectly. The left hemisphere doesn't know what the right hemisphere saw. So is this one person or two? Before the surgery, were there always two consciousnesses sharing one skull, just communicating so well they seemed like one? Did cutting the connection create a second soul, or does this mean the soul was an illusion all along, just a story the brain tells itself about being unified? Layer 3. The physics of information. Now we're going deep. Bear with me because this is where it gets truly strange. In physics, we have something called conservation laws. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It only changes form. The same is true for momentum, electric charge, and other quantities. These aren't just good ideas. They're absolute. They've never been violated in any experiment ever conducted. So here's the question. If the soul is something, if it's any kind of thing at all, does it follow conservation laws? Let's say it does. Then when you die, it can't be destroyed. It has to go somewhere, transform into something. But what? Energy? But we can account for all the energy in your body. When you die, the energy doesn't vanish. It disperses as heat, as chemical potential energy in your decomposing tissues, as food for bacteria. Where's the extra bit that's supposed to be the soul? Okay, maybe the soul doesn't have energy. Maybe it's pure information. That's actually a popular idea lately. The soul as a pattern of information that could, in principle, be copied, uploaded, transferred. But here's the problem. Information isn't a thing. Information is a relationship. It's a pattern. And patterns require substrates, something to be patterned. A song isn't the sheet music or the vibrations in air or the electrical signals in a wire. But it can't exist without some physical substrate. You can't have a song floating in pure abstraction. So if the soul is information, it needs a substrate. And the substrate is your brain. Which brings us right back to the brain being what creates the soul. Not the other way around. And here's where I'm going to tell you something that genuinely disturbs me, unless information is more fundamental than we think. Some physicists, serious ones, not cranks, have started suggesting that information might be a basic feature of the universe, like space or time or energy. John Wheeler, one of the great physicists of the 20th century, coined the phrase "it from bit," the idea that every physical thing, every it, derives its existence from information, from bits. If that's true, then maybe consciousness isn't created by atoms. Maybe it's a fundamental aspect of information itself. And maybe when your body dies, the information that is you doesn't vanish. It disperses, it spreads, it becomes part of the informational structure of the universe. This isn't the traditional soul. It's not going to heaven. It's not reincarnating. It's something stranger. It's the idea that the pattern that was you becomes woven into the fabric of reality itself. But wait, there's more to this story. Let me tell you about quantum mechanics and why it makes this even more confusing. In quantum mechanics, the universe doesn't have definite states until something measures them. Before measurement, particles exist in superpositions, being in multiple states at once. The famous Schrödinger's cat, both alive and dead. And measurement collapses the superposition into a definite state. But what counts as measurement? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics say it requires a conscious observer. Consciousness collapses the wave function. If that's true, and it's controversial, then consciousness isn't just an emergent property of matter. It's fundamental to reality itself. Matter doesn't create consciousness. Consciousness creates definite matter. Do I believe this? I don't know. It sounds like mysticism, but the math works, the experiments work, and we don't have a better explanation. Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, have proposed that consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules inside neurons. They suggest that the brain is a quantum computer and that consciousness is a quantum phenomenon. Most physicists are skeptical. The brain is too warm, too wet, too noisy for delicate quantum states to survive. But maybe not. Recent experiments have found quantum effects in photosynthesis and bird navigation. Maybe biology uses quantum mechanics more than we thought. And if consciousness is quantum, then maybe it's not localized. Quantum particles can be entangled, connected across arbitrary distances. Change one, and the other changes instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. What if consciousness is entangled with the universe? What if the boundary between you and the world is not as sharp as it seems? Now let me bring this back to something you can feel, something immediate. When I look at my daughter sleeping, I see her chest rise and fall. I hear her breath. I know, intellectually, that this is just biology. Neurons firing, oxygen being transported by hemoglobin, cellular respiration producing ATP, all chemistry, all physics. And yet, there's something it's like to be her. Right now, behind those closed eyelids, she's having experiences. Maybe she's dreaming, maybe she's in dreamless sleep. And there's nothing it's like, no inner experience at all. But when she wakes, she'll come back, she'll be there again, the lights will turn on, and one day they'll turn off for good. For me, for her, for everyone we love. Where will we go? The atoms won't go anywhere. They'll stay right here, recycled into new forms. The carbon in my body will become part of trees, part of grass, part of other living things. The atoms that were briefly me will persist for billions of years, maybe until the heat death of the universe. But the pattern, the specific arrangement, the information that is me, will dissolve. Is that death, or is it transformation? Here's what I find strange and beautiful. Every breath you take contains atoms that were once part of other people. Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, Leonardo da Vinci, your great-great-grandmother. The air mixes, the atoms circulate. You are literally breathing in pieces of everyone who ever lived, and they're breathing in pieces of you. There's a continuity here, not of individual souls, but of something deeper. The universe doesn't make new atoms, it recycles. Everything you are was once part of stars, before that, part of the primordial universe. And after you, it'll be part of something else. You're not separate from the world. You're a temporary eddy in a vast flow. The mystics have been saying this for thousands of years. Tat tvamasi, the Hindus say. Thou art that. You are the universe. The boundary between self and other is conceptual, not physical. Science is now saying the same thing, just in different words. But does that mean the soul doesn't exist, or does it mean the soul is everything? Let me offer you a different way to think about it. Maybe the question, where does the soul go, is based on a false assumption. It assumes the soul is a thing, a discrete object that can be in one place or another. But what if it's not? What if the soul is a process, not a thing? What if it's the verb, not the noun? What if souling is what happens when matter organizes itself in certain complex ways? When you're alive, your body is souling. The pattern is active, self-sustaining, experiencing. When you die, the souling stops, the pattern dissolves, but the capacity for patterns to soul, that remains in the universe. Other patterns will soul, other consciousnesses will arise. You are not your soul. You are the universe souling through a particular configuration of atoms for a brief window of time. And when that window closes, the universe will soul through other configurations, forever, or until it doesn't. Is that comforting? I don't know. It's not personal immortality. Your specific memories, your personality, your loves and fears, those will be gone. But the fact that there was ever something it was like to be you, that fact is permanent. It's woven into the history of the universe. It happened. It was real. And in some interpretations of physics, block universe models, where past, present, and future all exist equally, you're always there. Not in the future, not after death, but in your moment. Forever. The year 2024, or whenever you're alive, is as real as any other time. You're always there, living, experiencing, being. Time doesn't flow. We flow through time, and every moment is eternal. So what does this mean for you? What do you do with this information? First, let me reframe the terrifying part. Yes, it's disturbing to think that there might not be a soul in the traditional sense. No afterlife, no persistence of your specific individuality. But look at what we gain. You are not separate from the universe. You're not a ghost trapped in a machine. You're the universe itself, arranged in a way that can know itself, can love, can wonder. Every atom in you was forged in the heart of stars. You're made of star stuff. That's not metaphor. That's literal truth. Your consciousness is not a possession. It's an event. You don't have consciousness. You are consciousness happening. And when you die, consciousness doesn't end. It continues in other forms, other beings. The universe will keep waking up to itself again and again. The fear of death is really the